Hi, everyone. Hello, hello from me, Anna and Misha. We are the crazy Levine family. And well, I think we must be crazy just doing tours about the Soviet Union and me carrying on with tours about St. Petersburg in these times. But, we just couldn't but leave you, with some more insights into history. And we're so terribly homesick. So you are helping us as well dealing with this homesickness. And we appreciate your interest, of course. It means a lot to us. And we know there is interest in the Soviet period because actually the history of the Soviet period tells a lot about also the modern day situation, the current affairs, because many people who are supporting the current regime actually come from the Soviet times as well. And there is a lot to it. But we would like to switch from politics as much as possible for a number of reasons. And we would appreciate your understanding with this regards. But of course, we are going to talk about how things were in the Soviet Union. And well, Misha is always a great source for me of all the information about the Soviet Union. I mean, he's not that old. Yeah, he was born. Can I say when you were born? Okay, so 1978. So he's just 10 years older than I am. But he has a lot. He knows a lot, and so he is definitely the one who should be running those Soviet tours. Hi, Cindy. Good to see you. Hi, everyone. Hello, hello. And before we begin, I have tons of announcements. So I will keep it very short. I promise to Misha, I won't be chatting much. And if I will, if I chat too much, just pinch me, Misha, okay? And he will, trust me. He will. So let me share with you on the chat the numerous links. There are two more virtual tours tonight. One is in the Israel Museum Archaeology, no politics, archaeology, and one is in the Russian Museum tonight. We're talking about Ilya Repin, by the way. You remember the tours in his residence? Well, this is going to be all focused on his art, not about, well, I would let less about his life, more about his art and his legacy as an artist. Hi, Robert. I haven't seen you for a while. I hope you're doing okay. Thank you so much for joining. I thought you would be interested to watch this tour. So then tomorrow, Gelag in Residence, part two. And we're going to be talking about Maria Fedorovna, mother to Nicholas II. And we'll be, well, seeing the interiors of this Romanov residence. Then the next episode for this series, which is 1930s. Hi, Ronaldine, good to see you, and thank you for the message, and I totally understand. Thank you so much. So next episode, 1930s, is already scheduled for next weekend. Hi, Sharon, good to see you. Wow. Fantastic. I didn't expect you to join because, well, Sharon, as you know, now traveling in Georgia, and I'm being terribly jealous, but also happy for you. But I didn't expect you to join, dear. And I'll see you very soon as well. Oh, you're back in Tbilisi. So because you will be okay. I see. Wow. I'm jealous anyway. I'm jealous. And then already they are that close. You're watching me still live. It's fantastic. And so next weekend is 1930s, and we're planning to go like this, up until 1990s. And we're planning also a couple of, I would say, um, separate tours that are connected. That will be done most likely by when. Well, I would say it will be more like a live interview. So here's just, a lot of announcements. I've shared with you just some of the tours scheduled already. My website, anayaga.com, this is where you can find the tours that are scheduled, all of them. My PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee, this is exactly how you can support us. And we appreciate your support. And my YouTube channel, if you're not subscribed, please do, because I'm pretty this close to 1,000, and who knows what happens next. Yes, yes, Sharon, I understand you have a busy program. Okay, so this is, yeah, I think it's time to begin. I promised I'll be I'll just zip it up, and Misha, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello. I would like to tell you about 1920s. Why 1920s? The matter is, it's the beginning of the era, of the common era, because it was before the revolution, then the Civil War, and after the Civil War and revolution. That's what the new peaceful times started. And first of all, I would like to tell you about more or less the political life, for you to understand, to fill you in, for you to be in a context. Let's start, of course, with 1921. The war is over, war communism is over, and Vladimir Lenin, who is the so-called prime minister, people's commissariat president, something like that, but it's really prime minister of the new Russian Federative Socialist Soviet Republic. Let's begin.
Yeah, and just, okay, unzip for a minute. It's important to understand and to underline that we do not support the Soviet Union regime. We do not support Communist Party. We do not support any political party. And we're not fencing out Russia. We're not fencing out Soviet Union. I know you know that, but every once in a while I still get well, a little bit slammed by, messages of a certain kind, which you understand. So just to make it clear. And we will start sharing the screen. Well, this tour is being recorded, so if you joined late or you have to leave earlier, you will be able to catch up with it. For 1 week, it will be in open access on my YouTube channel. So that is why exactly I would really like you to subscribe. And then it will be available for my supporters 24/7. Okay, so this should be it. Give me a minute to set things up. And we are going to be using also there's going to be some music, and we will first test it with you. We just want to make sure you not only can see the video, but also hear the sound. So we will just do a sound check later on. Yes, so let's go. Just a second, I think I haven't switched off the chat. That's important. I would like to switch off the chat because I don't want to make the same mistake again. And let me very quickly go over the chat in case, we missed something important. No, that's good. It's mostly the the schedule for the next week that looks crazy busy. Okay, yeah, we're done.
Vladimir Lenin, who spent about 10 years in Russia, then 17 years in the immigration, wrote that only the communism should have been the only way to deal among people, and only the proletarians should be in the great assembly with the peasants. But it turned out it was a failure. During the Civil War, the whole country was as a disaster. A famine started. Everything was destroyed. So he decided to change everything, especially after the revolt of the Kronstadt sailors, who supported very much the revolutions, but then they were against, and this revolt was suppressed. But that was a sign, that was a last call for Lenin to stop the war communism and to start NEP. NEP was the new economy policy, but the main idea was to preserve the union of workers and peasants. Workers and peasants were the majority of Russia of those times, and they were supposed to get everything, while the bourgeoisie, the priests, the aristocrats, and the intelligentsia were supposed to get zero. Especially it was seen in the program of the ration cards, when the proletarians got the majority and the rest of people get the minority. And the peasants were not supposed to get anything at all because they were supposed to have their own bread and their own food. But that was the idea when the hunger started, and Lenin started a new economic policy, and the new social stratum appeared, called New Economy Policy Men, NEP-men. And NEP-men, they were like new bourgeoisie, and this is a caricature of 1920s. The people who started their own farms in the country, the people who started their own small businesses in the cities, and that's how the country revived somehow. And from 1921, 1926, even the amount of food and the amount of logistic infrastructure was revived.
Nepman does sound like a Superman, and those people definitely felt and lived like Superman. And people indeed believe that it was the upheaval, the great upheaval, and the rebirth of a country that just a couple of years before that had almost fallen apart. Well, it did fall apart, and then it was reassembled in a weird way. So people were trying to start things from scratch. I think it's important to add, but I'll be very short, I promise. And because he'll just start pinching me in a minute, so I have to be very quick.
Because I have lots of things to tell.
Yes, yeah, but I just want to make sure, like, this is the idea. People were feeling they were starting things from scratch. And that was a good start. And Lenin felt that after that big revolt in Kronstadt, I actually did a couple of tours back then, long time ago in Hago era. This was the center of the fleet. And the fleet and the sailors were the biggest, I would say, powerhouse of the revolution. And they could turn against Lenin, and then Lenin had nothing. So he would have been definitely swept by the forces of just, sailors and the fleet. So that's exactly what made Lenin change his direction a little bit. And that's definitely what saved him, first of all. And who knows what would have happened, but anyway, sorry.
As a result of the distress and the civil war, about 7 million homeless and children, homeless, normally orphans, appeared. But the Bolsheviks cherished them very much because they were the new people, the new generation, the people who were about to meet the communist era. And a lot of programs of orphanages, of the free schools appeared. And those homeless, because those homeless children were just the gangs of hooligans at the beginning. But then in the 1930s, they turned into more or less educated people. Also, the next very important stuff was to the literacy propaganda. Those are this is the blind man who is walking into abyss. He's an illiterate man. And this lady shows points us that all of us need to fight against the illiteracy. And so from the early 20s, when the majority of the country was literate, until the beginning of the Second World War, the majority of the country was literate. Why? Because the idea was that only the literate people could read the newspapers and to understand the propaganda, the communist, what Stalin and his comrades were saying. And a lot of libraries appeared, a lot of clubs appeared, and this was just a new generation of people who were reading only the permitted books only. So they were kind of guided through their way of life, through their culture.
Yeah, it says here, everyone head to the library.
Yeah. Every poor peasant should join the library and the reading clubs. So another thing was very important during the Civil War, lots of intellectuals were shot. Lots of intellectuals were emigrated, but there was still some of them who didn't want to
Were
leave.
exiled or emigrated?
Emigrated.
Emigrated, okay.
Emigrated. So there were some of them in Leningrad, Petrograd then, and Moscow, especially in Petrograd, which used to be a capital. So they were forced to sign a paper to emigrate. And they were not allowed to come back with a threat of a death penalty. So this is one of the steamboats or steamships called Prussia, who led from Petrograd to Europe. A number of philosophers, writers, literary critics, philologists. So this is the painting that depicts the most famous of them, including the very famous Russian philosopher Berdyaev, for example. The majority of them never came back. And that was 1922. That coincided somehow that 100 years after that, the war against Ukraine started, and also about, we don't know, 1 million, 2 million people also immigrated. Not all of them were philosophers, but still the intellectuals. Yes. So that's what.
Sorry.
I'm not getting bold.
No.
And that's a very, very important. Lenin and his comrades like Dzerzhinsky were forcing to do that.
Were forcing whom?
The philosophers.
So they forced them.
Yeah,
so they pushed them out. They tried to create the conditions absolutely unbearable for these people to stay in the country. So they were pushed out, squeezed out of the country.
In 1924, Lenin died. There was an attempt to death in 1918, so that worsened his health conditions, and also he had 3 strokes, and he died of atherosclerosis of the brain vessels, and he didn't leave like a will. He didn't have a successor, so the internal fight started. Here we see on the left, you see Zinoviev, head of Leningrad, Petrograd, Kamenev, head of Moscow, Stalin, head of secretary of political of the Communist Party, Lunacharsky, minister of culture, Krupskaya, Lenin's widow, and Kalinin and other comrades who started an internal fight.
Very much undercover.
Zinoviev was not only the communist leader of Leningrad, he also was a communist leader of Communist International, so-called the union of all the communist parties of the world. So he was a very important person, but he was very, very, very unpleasant man. And he was extremely cruel. He was even more cruel than the founder of Cheka, Dzerzhinsky. So he was ruthless, and he wasn't popular. So to become popular, he decided to change Petrograd, city of Peter the Great, into Leningrad, city of Lenin. That's the city where I was born, and is associated with the majority of the most part of the Soviet part of the Soviet history. I will tell you about Zinoviev later. But that was very important event for our country. Lev, or as we call him Lev, you call him Leon, and he was born as Leiba because he was Jewish, Bronstein. Trotsky was very, very important during the Civil War and Revolution, of course, but after that, he lost the internal party war and gradually started to lose his influence. He teamed up with Kamenev from Moscow and Zinoviev from Leningrad against Stalin, but Stalin suppressed them, and they were gradually expelled from all their important posts
And life.
in life. And gradually, it's spoiler.
Oh,
I will
sorry.
tell them about the 1930s.
I'm pretty sure that my viewers are so seasoned, so they know what happened to all these
With the
people.
icebreaker. Spoiler.
Sorry.
Yes, and Trotsky was very, very important. And all those people who supported Trotsky or who liked Trotsky had problems or had a chance to die before they had problems. I will tell you about that in the future. Kamenev and Zinoviev become like a sweet couple. They were two communist leaders from the early 1900s, 1910s. And Zinoviev was Lenin's secretary during about like 12 years. Kamenev was Stalin's close friend because they were together in exile.
Mm-hmm.
And they came back together. But they were against the October assault, October Revolution. So that was their weak, their weak part, and they were sent to exile in 1927. Then they lost completely their influence.
Looking good together.
In Kaluga. So all those NEP men who started their farms were forced either to join the collective farms or to go to exile to Siberia to die with a hunger death, because it wasn't Siberia like Novosibirsk. It was just like a tundra.
Yeah, pure wilderness.
Pure wilderness. So that's why either you give us all the bread and all the everything you have, or you will be exiled or dead or whatever. So that's from late 1920s that started to be compulsory, not voluntarily, but compulsory, not like kibbutz in Israel. But it was just a type of slavery. And people, the majority of Russia, like the peasants, were enslaved for decades. They didn't even have the passports until the Brezhnev times, until 1970s. And when NEP finished, and was over, the 5-year plan started. The 5-year plan was the idea, like every 5 years, that there should be some industrialization to be very quick, because Stalin's idea fix was to reach England, France, United States, all the so-called developed countries.
And to outpace them.
And outpace them. So that's why no matter how, and that's how the Gulag was created, but I will tell about that next time.
Okay. In the next episode,
1930s. Yes, 1930s. So, and let's start about culture.
Yeah, so boring stuff is over. I mean, thank you for just, your patience.
Vladimir Tatlin originally was a painter. And he was a vanguard painter. He took part in 1910s in different futurist exhibitions. So he was like a liar. He was a liar of Kazimir Malevich, for example. But then he became famous because he started to invent utopia of architecture. Like the most famous things that were not so recognized during his life, but after his death in 1960s and later in 1990s. For example, was his famous imaginary tower of the Third International that was supposed to be headquarters of the whole communist of the world, created in 1920s. That's how it was supposed to look. Everything was turning, everything was interconnected, everything was very like technological, and look how it looks, how it would look near the Peter and Paul fortress.
Even nowadays, it looks top notch.
Yeah.
So like this is what it would have looked like. I just cannot imagine that. So the idea is like with all this art that we're going to be talking about, art, architecture, music, people tried. So again, politics is one thing. So we gave you this context. I think it's important. I'll be quick, I promise. So we've given you the political context to understand what's going on in the country at that time. And then people, the creative class that stayed in the country, who were in the minority, of course, the minority, they had to survive, and they would turn to craziest ideas. But there was also, there was still this, some, like air, of some freedom, or like, possible prospects. So people were dreaming big.
Mm-hmm.
So a little did they know.
In 1918, Lunacharsky, the new Minister of Culture
and Education,
he sent an invitation to 120 intellectuals of Petrograd, and only 5 of them came.
That speaks for itself.
So that's why every talented person, including Tatlin, were very, very important for the new Russian, then future Soviet government. And all of them started to teach. Tatlin became the university professor, and also his colleague Konstantin Melnikov. Konstantin Melnikov was a very, very vanguard architect. He was born in 1890s. So in 1920s, he was a young man who became one of the leaders of so-called Vkhutemas, the art academy of then vanguard fine arts. And I would like to. He was one of the few people who had their own house in Moscow, which is still there. This one, look how vanguard it is, and he was the owner of that house, and his son, who died a couple of years ago, also was the owner of that house. That was absolutely nonsense for those times when we didn't have the private property during the Soviet times.
Yeah, it was still a period, of course, of all these communal apartments.
But during the 1920s, Melnikov was extremely influential. Yes. Let's look how it looks inside. So very, very rational, very innovative, and absolutely new according to the previous architecture, which influenced on the architects throughout the world. And of course, this is a house of culture. House of culture projected by Melnikov was one of the masterpieces of Art Deco, or if we call it avant-garde or constructivism. You see only the straight lines, and everything is rationable, and everything was designed for the workers and former peasants who were supposed to do something after the work, not to go to the bar and drink vodka. No, they could read, they could play in a performance. They could play speak foreign languages. They could do something like a model of ships or something. That was very important. That was the communist idea, that they needed to develop their abilities, and that was a good idea, and lots of people became professionals from that. And another one, which is more pompous, house of culture, named after Zuev. Now this building is a theater, but then it used to have of course, a theater and a concert hall and the astronomy library and look only either cylinders or only the straight lines, the cubes and spheres.
Mhm.
And this is Leningrad or St. Petersburg. Factory kitchen was designed especially for the workers. Workers lived nearby. They worked nearby, and they ate there. The factory was manufacturing the food. The food was served in that huge kitchen for the workers. So, because they were not supposed to have kitchens, because they needed more time to build the communism.
And women were not obliged and they were not supposed to cook at home at all. So the idea was to give women enough time to work,
Yes.
not to rest.
And not to raise children, because there were a lot of communal kindergartens.
Yes, exactly. So the idea was work and develop the country.
Now it's a shopping mall, doesn't matter. And this is a very vanguard building of the Krasnaya Znamya, red banner, a textile factory. Originally, it was built before the revolution, but then it was rebuilt and extended. And look at those volumes. Look at this power station, and it was designed originally with the participation of a German engineer, but then he left in 1930s. And this also is very important because the first pioneers appeared. This like Soviet Boy Scouts. So the first pioneers in Petrograd, 1922.
Okay.
And of course, one of the constructivist building was Lenin's mausoleum. Lenin was embalmed after his death, and first he was exposed in the street. It was -30.
His body.
And then people adored him, and then the first temporary wooden mausoleum was created, then a bigger wooden, and then this made of stone, which looks like a bit like a pyramid from the indigenous peoples from the Central America, let's say. And it's still working as a free museum. And Lenin was buried here, and you can see this small statue.
He's not buried. I mean, his body is still there.
Wait, sorry, he's but the rest of people were buried here, like this is a small statue. I think it's Stalin, and there are lots of other communist leaders.
You see there, on the walls, these plaques,
like Brezhnev, Yuri Gagarin, Maxim Gorky, and others. The most famous Soviets of those times, and so it's quite an interesting museum, free museum.
Yeah, normally there would be long lines.
So he is there for 100 years now.
Yeah, he's been there for a century.
Sergei Eisenstein, I'm sorry, that's a typo. Sergei Eisenstein originally was a theater director, but then he was interested in new techniques. He became the film director. He was the student of Всеволод Merhold, the main theater director. I hope I will tell you about him. And Sergei Eisenstein, or Eisenstein as we call him, filmed his silent movie in 1925 to commemorate the first Russian Revolution, called the battleship Potemkin. Potemkin was the name of a battleship. And there's a story that happened when the first Russian Revolution started. It lasted 2 years, 1905, 1907. It was shot in Leningrad and in Odessa. And when the film was premiered, it was a shock because people couldn't, they just believed that they were really there. And of course, cameraman Tisse and Eisenstein impressed very much the audience. And Sergei Eisenstein traveled to Hollywood to get more mastery, and then he shot his shadowers Alexander Nevsky and Ivan the Terrible in the late 30s, early 40s. I will tell you about that next time. But then I would want to show you the fragment, like a trailer to the battleship Potemkin with the famous Potemkin Odessa steps, with the famous baby trolley falling, with the famous and
You will recognize it.
you will recognize
I'm
it.
sure you
And the most important, that there are no main character.
And it's also one thing here that, well, I'm sure when you see this, it will definitely ring a bell because you will find parallels and you say, oh, I've seen it before in this, in that, and in that film. And actually, also one of the ideas for this tour was to show you that, yes, there was very little information about the Soviet Union. And obviously, the Western world, Europe, the States, people used to think and still think that it was, dark ages of Russia, and the country was lived in barbaric conditions, and people were just, barbarians. To an extent, it is true, but not entirely. And this tour also shows that there was other side to this, often, I would say, neglected by, I would say, other specialists. So we'll give it a try. We turn it on. I hope there is a sound. Once we're done with this fragment, I'll turn on the chat to see if you could hear us. I mean, the music.
Okay, so and
Let's check if there is sound, because we're gonna need this. I mean, if you don't have sound now, it's fine, but it might be critical for the next parts. So please let us know if you have just heard the music. Dolly, good to see you. Sorry, I didn't see you join. You could hear it. That's great. So we suggest not to have a Q&A now, because we really need to save time. And exactly at 30 minutes, so it's going to be 9:30 my time, we're going to wrap it up and we'll have a Q&A. So let's do it this way. And we switch off the chat as usual, and we are just heading back. Yeah, Misha, go ahead.
another very vanguard idea was offered by Dziga Vertov. Dziga Vertov was Soviet director of Jewish origin from Ukraine, and he was a documentary film director. So he didn't like any theater, any script, any actors. He just wanted to capture everything that he saw with his eye, with his film director eye. His brother Kaufman was a film director, so they together created a very innovative man with a movie camera. They film, which is more than 1 hour, that you look at everything like a film director with the same eye, and also you see the combined shots, combined frames, and and very, very quick everything. And he, like one of the inventors of the modern time editing. Let's see how it goes. Okay, let's switch to literature. Sergei Yesenin was one of two main poets of the Soviet Union. I will tell he was one of two. He was a lyrical poet. He talked about Russians. He wrote poetry about Russian soul, about Russian nature, Russian countryside. He had huge success as a poet and as a womanizer. He married first one of the most beautiful girls in Moscow, Zinaida Reich. Then he divorced her. Then he married American dancer Isadora Duncan, who found international free ballet. Then he married great daughter of Leo Tolstoy, and then he shot himself. Not shot. He was hanged, but there are some different versions that probably he shot himself. We don't know exactly, but now we will see
yeah. So it's going to be a disturbing photograph, a dead body.
A very famous photograph.
Yeah. So we showed it to you because this photo is everywhere. Once you just Google Sergei Yesenin, you'll have this photo of his body.
He was just 30 years old.
Yes, he was 30 years old. The man had it all.
And he shot himself because he was Trotsky's man.
Yeah, but he didn't shoot himself because first of all, according to other things, how they looked, he first hanged himself, and then after he hanged himself, he shot himself in the head.
Yes, but before that, he knew that there would be a collection of his poetry.
Yeah, he knew they would come after him because he supported Trotsky.
Yes, he supported Trotsky, but from one part, he had a huge success because there would be a great collection of his work. From another time, he thought that it would end badly. And
it would have ended badly for sure. Yeah. So we're going to show you this photo. If you cannot tolerate seeing dead bodies, you're not going to like it. So please turn away. We'll let you know when to look again. But this photo is all over Google. Mm-hmm. So it was a woe for entire country.
And now I wanted to.
We're back.
Now I want to read the poetry the last poetry he wrote with his own blood.
On the wall of that room.
On the wall of the room in the hotel when he died. So let's say like.
But he allegedly killed himself twice.
Goodbye, my friend. Goodbye, my dear. You'll stay forever in my heart. Impending parting is too near, but we won't be too long apart. Without a word, goodbye, my friend. Don't grieve for me. Be calm and meek. Death is an old thing in the end. To live is hardly newer it. Okay. That's about Sergei Yesenin. And another tragic figure, Vladimir Mayakovsky. Vladimir Mayakovsky was a vanguard futurist poet and graphic designer.
From Georgia.
From Georgia. And he was a Russian noble, but he was born in Georgia. He was not number two, number one. He's one of two.
One of the two.
One of the two. Mayakovsky, and they were more or less the same age. And they didn't like each other. Because Mayakovsky said, "Oh, you're always right about the country." He's saying, "Oh, Mayakovsky, you're always right about industry." And Mayakovsky worked in the advertising agency that promoted the state goods, like buy this kind of goods, buy those kind of goods, and
like there was any other kind of good not produced by the state.
There were. It was during the NEP there were.
During the NEP, yes.
There were. And Mayakovsky was extremely popular. He was one of the few people who could, together with could travel abroad. And he has never been married, but he had a strange relationship with his girlfriend who was married, and they lived, three of them together. And his girlfriend was his muse. And her husband was literary critic, so they lived in a good family, and he became very popular. And that's one of his posters. He was a very innovative, unusual graphic designer. Money is a scam. Raise the money for the steam trains. That's his muse. And this is one of the posters made by his friend Alexander Rodchenko,
And you must have seen it.
the one who worked together with him at the advertising. Mayakovsky was writing the slogans, and Rodchenko was a graphic designer, and Lilia was their model. So Mayakovsky shot himself because also when nobody came to his art graphics exhibition, nobody from the government, and he wanted to go abroad, and they didn't give him visa.
And why didn't anybody come?
Did anybody come? Because he was the vanguard futurist, and then it was a new times, 1930. It was a time.
So it was so basically we're covering this 10 years,
Yeah.
and later on NAP would be put a lead on.
It's not only about NEP. It's like because a vanguard idea, futurist communism, and like building.
So these people were too avant-garde.
Yeah.
They were going a bit wrong direction for the communists.
He didn't want, and he could. He was so this kind of genius. He couldn't adapt.
Yes. He was definitely, looking a bit different direction.
And he shot himself. We know it for sure.
Yes.
In 1930. And there was a mixture of political and love and hate and everything, and that's I wanted to read you out loud one of his poems dedicated to the Soviet passport. Soviet passport in my hand, I drip out bureaucracy's guts. Would no reverence for mandates, good riddance, pack off to very hell for good. Any old paper, but this one, as the most valuable of certificates, I pull it from the pens where my documents are. Read it, envy. I am a citizen of the USSR. He was paid for a lion, so that's why he wrote a lot of short lines to get more money. That was it.
I'm green with envy.
Kornei Chukovsky was originally a literary critic, very, very famous before the revolution. During the revolution and civil war, he was one of the co-founders of the special courses for the proletarian writers. And then when this proletarian writers House of Arts was closed, he moved from Petrograd to Moscow and became the children's poet. And he became not only the children's poet of 1920s #1, but for all the Soviet period, he became #1. He created the whole new parallel world, which didn't have anything to do with the communist regime, with the Soviet times, like a parallel universe.
Escapism.
Escapism.
At its best.
This is original 1923 cover of his book, Cockroach, or Giant Cockroach. Sometimes they say it's a cockroach has mustache like Stalin. Maybe. I'm not. We don't have any proof. But it's a very and also there is another personage called Moidodir or Shinem Clean. So it's like a monster who wants to clean a dirty boy. And I want
meaning literally very dirty,
dirty boy, and I want to show you the 1930s cartoon.
Yeah, and it's very much Chukovsky was very much like Dr. Seuss. So inventing words, rhymes, and kids loved it. Adults loved it. So we grew up. Me also.
All of us.
Yeah,
all of us. All of us.
Even after the Soviet period as well in the 90s, because I was born in 1987, but obviously I was raised.
So he was as innovative as Mayakovsky, but in a different way.
Yeah, for kids.
Прямо в мойку, с головою окунуть. Арабарас!
Okay. Another, and so talking about the pros, I want to tell you about Ilya Ilf and Evgeny Petrov. They were a writing duo from Odessa, which now is Ukraine. They started as comic writers in a railway newspaper, but then a plot appeared, and they created a story about two crooks who are looking for treasure in one of 12 chairs when the mother-in-law of one of the crooks hid them before the civil war. So they need to tear all the 12 chairs in 1927 to find the treasures, diamonds.
Yeah, so it was somewhere in the fillings.
Somewhere inside.
Yeah.
And one of them is a former noble. Another one is a crook, like a professional crook who works like that with unknown past. And one is called...
definitely some dodgy business behind.
Yes, and that was a kind of and there are a lot of people from NEP, a lot of NEP men. That was kind of critics to the NEP people, but it was so humorous, it was so funny, it became one of the main book of 1920s, and then it was put on screen. First novel about 12 chairs, and the second novel about golden calf, when this Stab Bender, the main young crook, wants to persuade the millionaire to give his money because they're illegal. And of course, there are lots of jokes, lots of gags, lots of amazing screen versions. I want to show you a trailer from a musical.
Yeah, we love it.
So this is the poster of the 12 chairs. Also, it was put on screen by Mel Brooks, by the way. It wasn't a very good one, but still, this one is amazing. This is the golden calf shot, but I...
Мы, кажется, знакомы? Инспектор пожарной охраны. Я Воробьянинова сын.
Воробьянинова Ипполита Матвеевича.
А че это вы такой зеленый?
Потому что мне некогда.
Половина моя, половина наша.
Туда я ее в качель.
Жуть. А больше ничего не хотите? Я пришла к тебе с приветом. Знойная женщина. Мечта поэта.
Первый сон.
Продайте мне этот стульчик. Он мне очень нравится.
I mentioned Всеволод Myrhold. Всеволод Myrhold originally started as an actor at Stanislavski Moscow Art Theater. Stanislavski from the famous Stanislavski system. But he didn't have main roles at Stanislavski Theater. So he started his own performances. And as a film director, he worked with very famous actress Vera Komersarjevskaya. Then he became the main director of Alexandrinsky Theater, the main drama theater in Petrograd. But then the Bolsheviks came and
Leningrad. No,
Petrograd.
Still Petrograd. Yes, still Petrograd.
And he accepted revolution. He was one of the first 5 people that came to Lunacharsky, the Minister of Culture, to take part in the Bolshevik propaganda. He got his own theater. He called him Theater of the Russian Federation #1. That's how he called it, and he invented his new methodology. Like his actors were supposed to be like gymnasts and fitness instructors at the same time. So it was very, very, very quick, and the best stage artist designed the scenery for him. Very, very unusual, and and he married Yesenin's one of the Yesenin's wives.
Yeah, that poet who killed himself
The poet
twice.
who killed himself, and she wasn't a professional actress. She wasn't an actress at all, but she acted, and she was so charming, so beautiful that everybody accepted it. So he said, "Why does she need to act if you have me?" Told Meyerhold. That's Zinaida Reich. Bug or Bad Bug is one of the most famous performances, the play by Vladimir Mayakovsky. So the music by Dmitry Shostakovich, and the story about Nepman. First he was a proletarian, then he became a Nepman, and there's a very funny scene of the very unattractive people who dress very fancy, not like proletarians, who dance foxtrot, American dance, and real and very, very unusual, very creepy music by young Shostakovich sounds like there, and amazing actors like Commedia dell'arte, like masks. And now I want to show you like a fragment of the memoirs. This is Vladimir Shostakovich's memoirs of different people.
Листы своей старой рукописи.
60s that have their evidences and put some pictures.
И говорит.
Я эту музыку давно не слушал, и мне будет любопытно ее вместе с вами послушать.
Сцена театра. Картина 3. Свадьба.
Большая парикмахерская комната. Перед зеркалами бумажное цветище. За столом Эльзевира Ренессанс невеста, Пьер Скрипкин жених, гости. А в первом ряду портера
в витиеватой раме и цветы, какими расписывались в дешевых парикмахерских зеркалах. Этот рисунок хранится сейчас в Бахрушинском музее.
Грохает гитарой по затылку баяна, в драке опрокидывает печь, пламя, дым, крики «Горим!» Кто сказал «Горим? Пожар!»
Картина 4. Отблески далекого пламени. Гарниз скликает пожарных. На его призыв откликнулись участники самодеятельности Московской пожарной охраны. Вы видели их на нашем снимке?
Товарищи граждане, вот я, темные республику зазря спалят. Живя с каминами, живя с примусами, зажжете дом и сгорите сами. Случайный сон причина пожаров, на сон не читайте.
Just some comments about the last bit, that there were people from the real firefighters who took part in the local firefighters theater, in the firefighters club. And Dmitry Shostakovich started his career with this music, and then he became world famous classical composer. And then, of course, in 1930s, he was accused of formalism, and he was banned from the professional for a time being. And Vladimir Mayakovsky, of course, was immortalized with this thing. It's a bit of utopia, because one of the main characters, Nepman, dies in a fire, and then he is frozen, and he is saved 50 years after, 1979, 50 years after that, and then there's a communism, utopia, and it turns out that he was frozen together with a bed bug, and they are exposed in the future zoo as a vulgar, old-fashioned people.
Yes, Tolstoy and Dostoevsky were read throughout that period because
not all that
but
period.
not yes. Okay,
I will tell. Yes, Mayakovsky told, for example, let's throw Tolstoy from the ship of modernity. Dostoevsky at some point was banned from until 1950. From until 1950, because
not at that time.
Lenin didn't like Dostoevsky. Stalin didn't like Dostoevsky. But then gradually he was he appeared in the classical curriculum of the Soviet schools of literature, and Tolstoy was more or less always against the power. Dostoevsky was more like it. He was not explicitly, but he was more like for.
I would say he was more supportive of,
yes,
like, you know, like really, really lower class people.
Yeah.
And that's what the Bolsheviks sympathized. So that's why Dostoevsky and, well, both Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, they, I would say, in the last trouble with the Soviets.
What would have been if Trotsky had taken over instead of Stalin? Some people say it would have been worse. Some people, Trotsky probably wasn't so pathologically violent. He was, but because Stalin.
Bloodthirsty.
Huh?
Bloodthirsty.
Well, he had an idea. He had an idea.
And
like,
a talent.
Lenin and Trotsky had an idea. Stalin had only one idea, that he was a mediocre, and he needed to be the number one. Trotsky wasn't like that.
Yeah.
Trotsky and even Lenin wasn't like that. Lenin didn't like it when everybody praised him, and Stalin enjoyed it because he knew that he wasn't. Because there were lots of people who were extremely more talented, like Bukharin, like Kamenev, like Lunacharsky, and of course, Stalin. That was the idea. And Trotsky, I don't know. Who brought that history? Thank you, Dorley.
Thank you, Jolie. Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Yeah, please let us know. We're still here for a couple more minutes. So
Yes,
if you have any questions, please let us know. So next week we're doing 1930s. And we will try to stick to the schedule, like to every 10 years per weekend. And as I said,
not exactly 10 years. I will.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yes, I would like to talk. I would like not to talk much about the wars.
Yeah.
Because the war is like a different topic.
So the idea is that the wars and politics, it will only be kind of at the background. It will be only the context in which other things, you know, other areas of life, art, education, social, kind of things, that they existed and developed and tried to survive.
Violent energy. I have an answer to that. Why that violent energy? Because the people before the revolution, the majority of people didn't have enough rights. There were no career lifts, and like, for example, the merchants couldn't become the ministers. The peasants couldn't become engineers. The proletarians couldn't become, professors, because there were lots of these restrictions, and people were very angry. And the anger was extreme, especially during angry people from the war started one revolution, another revolution, and the civil war, and that was a chain of violence.
And even before that, ordinary people had been suppressed, with slavery or serfdom, many things, many suppressions, and it had been, building up, and then just, exploded, and well, it's just how humans
I
work.
will
We need to
explain.
take it out somehow, right?
The idea was good. Let's let all the people live equally, but only the decent people, and people who are not decent should be exterminated. That's it.
Yeah. So
Every time they say, well, everything for everyone, but for decent people. Who could decide who are decent, who are not decent, what to do? So that was the beginning of the great purges and things like that.
yes, so we will be talking about the Great Purges, of course. Here is the link to my website where you can find the complete schedule. And the next episode, 1930s, is already up on the website. Here is the link to my YouTube channel where you'll be able to find the recording if you joined late or had to leave earlier or any other reason. And of
The last
course,
question.
here is, yes, my PayPal and Buy Me account links. Thank you so much for your donations. It keeps us going, it keeps us running, and we are happy to share history with you.
I understand that intellectuals had to leave the country, but the persons you showed were also intellectuals. What do I misunderstand? I'm talking about the people who didn't accept the revolution.
Yes, but their worker did and got disappointed later on.
There were people who got disappointed, and there are also people who were like from the bourgeoisie, from the merchants, or from the rich peasants, or they just couldn't be according to their ancestry. They couldn't become a part of the society at all. That they couldn't do it. And some of them, they were during the white movement against the Red Army. Some of them were from a different party, like a socialist revolutionary party. No, they were not allowed. And they didn't matter whether they were intellectuals, whether they weren't. Those who were intellectuals in the 20s, many of them were repressed in 1930s or even in 1940s or 50s. So it depended.
So all these people that we've been talking about, if they did not die in 1920s, they would in 1930s. So it's a big spoiler.
Your father was born 1917
Wow.
in Leningrad,
Wow.
Petrograd.
Yeah, wow, totally. That's fascinating. I mean, and everything that comes with it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. In 25 minutes from now, meet me in Israel Museum in Jerusalem for another portion of archaeology thousands of years ago. Oh, by the way, thunderstorm has just started here, which is refreshing. And then there's going to be a tour about Repin in the Russian Museum. So yeah, Repin, he also, by the way, was a victim of the revolution. I will tell you in the end. So you're welcome to join, even if Russian art is not something you're interested in. Well, Repin was quite a phenomenon. And the phenomenon was also that he both was the artist of realism, and he did portray life just, exactly as it was. But on the other hand, his works were purchased and commissioned by the Romanovs. And he also had this unique opportunity and honor to make state portraits of Nicholas II, of Alexander III. And he was even invited to make a picture of a wedding of Nicholas II and Alix. So quite interesting. So I can't wait to share it with you. And tomorrow, the second episode of Yelagin Palace. And please don't forget to also follow me on Instagram and Facebook, because I have started creating reels, and I'm trying to be, I would say regular, but it just takes some time. So, but there will be more, so a lot more quality content that I can never pack into my tours. But I try to make them related, and I try to find the connections between in Georgia, Russian Empire, Israel, and sometimes they are so many, so numerous. Thank you so much for joining. I'm zipping it up again, and even with all these, little digressions, we almost made it on time. Thank you, Robert. It's been great to see you again. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your support. So Misha and I will see you on next weekend. And one more thing that I almost forgot, an exclusive tour next Sunday. I'll be taking you to a apartment in Saloniki, Tbilisi, 19th century neighborhood. And the owner of the apartment, whose family has been living in this apartment since late 19th century, is going to give us a tour. It's on Sunday, June 16. Exclusive thing, and the recording will not be available on YouTube. That's exactly how Marina, the owner, wants it, and I understand. So you don't want to miss it. The links are on my website. Thank you so much for joining.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.